Dr. Amanda Clark stared at the strange readings on her screen for the third time that morning. The data coming from Earth looked wrong, but she could not figure out why. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, as she worked in the small lab aboard the Kepler research station. The station floated quietly around Europa, one of Jupiter's moons far from the warm blue world where she was born. Something was happening to Earth's satellites, and Amanda did not like what she was seeing. The signals were getting weaker each day, but not in any way that made sense. It was like someone was slowly turning down the volume on the entire planet. Professor Jake Morrison walked into the lab carrying 2 fresh cups of coffee. He was older than Amanda, with gray hair and kind eyes that always seemed to be thinking about something far away. Jake had been studying space signals for 30 years, and Amanda trusted his experience more than anyone else's. Still looking at those Earth readings, Jake said as he handed her a cup. You know, equipment fails sometimes. It's probably just old satellites breaking down. Amanda shook her head and pointed at her screen. Look at this pattern, Jake. 17 different satellites all losing signal strength at exactly the same rate. That doesn't happen by accident. Jake pulled up a chair and studied the data with her. The numbers showed a steady decline in signal strength from Earth's communication networks over the past 2 weeks. Every satellite, every space station, every piece of human technology in orbit around Earth was slowly going quiet. Maybe it's solar interference, Jake suggested, but his voice did not sound sure. The sun has been active lately. I checked. That already, Amanda replied. Solar activity is normal. This is something else. Far across the solar system, on a ship that humans had never seen, High Coordinator Vexthal watched the same data on his own screens. The tall, thin alien had skin like polished metal, and eyes that glowed with a soft blue light. He stood in the command center of his vessel, surrounded by other members of the Zephyrian collective. The silence protocol is working perfectly, reported his second-in-command, a younger Zephyrian named Krelvar. Human technology is degrading at the predicted rate. They will be completely isolated within 1 Earth month. Vexthal nodded slowly. The Zephyrians had been watching Earth for 3 years, studying human behavior through intercepted communications and satellite observations. What they saw disturbed them greatly. Humans were violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. They fought constant wars and destroyed their own environment. The collective had decided that humanity posed a threat to galactic peace. Have they detected our disruptors yet? Vexthal asked. No, Krelvar replied. Their technology is too primitive to recognize quantum interference patterns. They believe their equipment is simply failing naturally. The Zephyrian plan was simple and elegant. They had placed quantum disruptors at key points throughout the solar system, devices no larger than a human fist but capable of disrupting technology across vast distances. The disruptors worked slowly, making human equipment fail in ways that looked accidental. First, they would isolate humanity by destroying their space-based technology. Then they would move closer to Earth and eliminate ground-based systems. Finally, when humans were helpless and confused, the collective would arrive to finish what they had started. Back on the Kepler station, Amanda was not giving up. She had spent the entire day running tests and checking data from every source she could access. The pattern was too clear to ignore. Something was deliberately interfering with human technology. Jake, I want to send a message to Earth, she said. I think we need to warn them about this. Jake looked worried. Warn them about what exactly? We don't know what's causing this. We know it's not natural, Amanda insisted. That's enough, she began composing a message to the Space Defense Command on Earth. The message was simple but urgent. Human technology in space was being systematically disabled by an unknown force. She recommended that Earth begin emergency preparations for a complete communication blackout. The message never reached Earth. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was conducting a routine maintenance check on the space station New Frontier when her world started falling apart. The station orbited Earth at a comfortable distance, serving as a way station for ships traveling to the outer planets. Lisa had been in space for 8 years and had seen every kind of equipment failure imaginable. But this was different. Control, we're showing massive system failures across all departments, she spoke into her radio. Life support is holding, but everything else is going dark. The response from Earth was filled with static. New Frontier, we're seeing similar problems planetside. Stand by for further instructions. Those were the last clear words Lisa heard from Earth. Within hours, every major system on the New Frontier had failed. The computers that controlled navigation, communication, and life support were shutting down one by one. Lisa and her crew of 12 worked frantically to switch to backup systems, but even those were failing. On Earth, the situation was becoming desperate. In cities around the world, power grids were collapsing without explanation. Military bases found their most advanced computers and weapon systems simply stopping. Air traffic control centers went dark, leaving thousands of aircraft to navigate by sight alone. General Paul Henderson stood in the Emergency Command Center beneath Washington, D.C., watching his world crumble on dozens of screens. Every few minutes, another red light appeared on the global status board, indicating another critical system failure. The United States military, the most technologically advanced force on the planet, was being reduced to Stone Age technology in a matter of hours. "Sir, we've lost contact with NORAD," reported Colonel Betty Walsh. "All satellite networks are down, we're flying blind." Henderson gripped the edge of the table until his knuckles turned white. "What about our nuclear deterrent?" "Missile systems are offline, sir. The computers controlling our warheads have crashed. We can't even confirm that our weapons are secure." Around the world, the same scene was playing out in every major capital. In Moscow, Beijing, London, and Paris, military leaders watched helplessly as their nation's defenses simply vanished. Modern civilization, built on a foundation of complex technology, was collapsing like a house of cards. Dr. Amanda Clark watched the last communication from Earth fade into static. She and Jake stood alone in their small lab, suddenly cut off from everything they had ever known. Outside the porthole, Jupiter's great red spot swirled in eternal silence, indifferent to the crisis unfolding in the inner solar system. "We're on our own now," Amanda whispered. On his command ship, High Coordinator Vexthal observed the chaos on Earth with satisfaction. Humans were proving to be exactly as helpless as predicted when separated from their technology. The first phase of the silence protocol was complete. "Begin phase 2, he ordered. "Deploy the hunter units to eliminate any remaining resistance." The war for humanity's survival had begun, and Earth didn't even know it yet. 3 months had passed since the Great Silence began, and Major General Paul Henderson had learned to live like his grandfather did during World War II. The underground command center in Colorado looked more like a museum than a modern military facility. Radio operators used equipment from the 1960s, maps covered every wall, and messages traveled by motorcycle courier between bases. Paul stood over a large paper map of North America, marking the latest reports with colored pins. Red pins showed cities that had gone completely dark. Blue pins marked areas where some technology still worked. There were far too many red pins and not nearly enough blue ones. "Sir, we have a courier from Detroit," announced Sergeant Carol Martin. She was young, maybe 25, but had adapted to the new world faster than most of the older soldiers. The courier was a thin man named Pete, who had driven his motorcycle 300 miles through dangerous territory. He carried a handwritten message in a waterproof pouch. Paul read it quickly, then read it again to make sure he understood. "They found something," Paul said to his staff. "A woman named Sophie Turner thinks she knows how the aliens are doing this." Engineer Sophie Turner had been working in a basement workshop in Detroit for 2 months, surrounded by pieces of broken alien technology. She was not a soldier or a scientist, just a woman who fixed car engines for a living before the world ended. But Sophie had a gift for understanding how things worked, and she had been studying the remains of an alien device that crashed near the city. The device was small, about the size of a football, and made from materials that did not exist on Earth. Sophie had carefully taken it apart piece by piece, drawing diagrams and taking notes. What she found inside made no sense according to human science, but she was beginning to understand how it worked. "Tony, hand me that screwdriver," Sophie called to her assistant. Tony Russo was a mechanic from Brooklyn who had somehow made it to Detroit after New York fell. He was good with his hands and asked smart questions. "This thing is like a radio," Sophie explained as she pointed to different parts of the alien device. But instead of sending sound, it sends something that makes our machine stop working. Tony leaned closer to look. How do we stop it? I think we can build something that blocks its signal, Sophie said, like putting up a metal wall that radio waves can't get through. Back in Colorado, Paul Henderson was planning humanity's first real fight back. The reports from Detroit gave him hope, but he needed more information. He had sent scouts to every major city where alien devices had been found. Most of the scouts never came back. The aliens had not been sitting still either. High Coordinator Vexthul had become impatient with the slow progress of the Silence Protocol. Humans were proving more adaptable than expected. Some groups had started using old technology that the quantum disruptors could not affect. Others had learned to communicate using light signals and messenger birds. Deploy the hunter drones, Vexthul ordered from his ship. Begin eliminating human resistance groups directly. The hunter drones were sleek metal creatures about the size of a small car. They moved silently through the air and were equipped with energy weapons that could cut through steel. The aliens sent them to Earth's major cities with orders to destroy any organized human activity. Tony Russo was the first human to see a hunter drone up close. He was scavenging for parts in Manhattan when the metal creature appeared above him. It moved like a predator, scanning the area with beams of red light. Tony hid behind a burned-out car and watched as the drone used its weapons to destroy a radio antenna that some survivors had built. The drone's weapons made no sound, but they cut through metal like butter. Tony realized that conventional weapons would be useless against such technology. But as he watched, he noticed something interesting. The drone seemed to have trouble when it flew near a pile of old car batteries that were leaking acid. Tony was not a scientist, but he understood electricity. The leaking batteries were creating an electromagnetic field, and the alien technology did not like it. He spent the next week building a weapon from spare car parts and battery acid. When the hunter drone returned, Tony was ready. The device Tony built was simple but effective. It used a car engine to generate a powerful electromagnetic pulse, similar to what happened during a lightning strike. When the hunter drone came close, Tony activated his weapon. The drone immediately lost control and crashed into a building. Tony's victory was small, but news of it spread quickly through the underground networks that humans had built. If the aliens could be hurt, they could be beaten. Dr. Amanda Clark was still trapped on the Kepler station, but she had not been idle. Working with Professor Jake Morrison, she had been studying the quantum disruptors from a distance. Their observations from space gave them a unique perspective on how the alien technology worked. "Jake, look at this," Amanda said, pointing to data on her screen. "The alien devices have to constantly adjust their signals to match human electromagnetic signatures." Jake studied the readings carefully. "What does that mean?" "It means they're not as smart as they think," Amanda replied. "Every time we change our technology, they have to recalibrate their weapons. If we can change fast enough, we might be able to stay ahead of them." Amanda began working on a way to send this information to Earth. The quantum disruptors blocked most forms of communication, but she had an idea. Using the station's emergency laser system, she could send messages by flashing coded light signals toward Earth. It would take time, but it might work. On Earth, the war was spreading to every continent. In London, survivors had discovered that the alien technology was vulnerable to certain frequencies of sound. In Tokyo, engineers were building weapons from old television parts. In Moscow, soldiers had learned that the hunter drones could be confused by mirrors and bright lights. Sophie Turner's workshop in Detroit had become a center for human resistance technology. She had successfully built several devices that could block alien signals, and Tony Russo had improved his electromagnetic weapon design. Other survivors brought them broken alien technology to study, and Sophie's team learned something new from each piece. "We're starting to understand how they think," Sophie told Paul Henderson during a rare radio contact. "Their technology is very advanced, but it's also very rigid. They expect us to behave in predictable ways." "What do you mean?" Paul asked. "They built their weapons to defeat human technology as it existed 3 months ago," Sophie explained. "But we're not using that technology anymore. We're adapting faster than they can adjust. This news gave Paul hope, but he also knew that time was running short. Reports from around the world showed that the aliens were becoming more aggressive. The hunter drones were appearing in greater numbers, and some cities had been completely destroyed. High Coordinator Vexthul was indeed becoming frustrated. The humans were supposed to have been eliminated by now, but instead, they seemed to be learning and adapting. Some of his drones had been destroyed by primitive human weapons, and the quantum disruptors were becoming less effective as humans abandoned advanced technology. Perhaps we should accelerate our timeline, suggested Krelvar. Deploy the invasion fleet directly. Vexthul considered this option. The original plan called for a slow, methodical elimination of human technology, followed by a final strike when humanity was helpless. But humans were proving more resilient than any species the collective had encountered before. No, Vexthul decided. We will continue the current strategy, but increase the pressure. Double the number of hunter drones and target their communication networks more aggressively. Dr. Amanda Clark finally succeeded in establishing laser communication with Earth. Her first message reached a radio station in Australia, where operators had learned to watch the sky for light signals. The message was simple but crucial. The alien technology had weaknesses, and humanity could exploit them if they worked together. The message was passed from station to station across the globe, carried by motorcycle couriers, ham radio operators, and even carrier pigeons. Within a week, every human resistance group on Earth knew that the aliens were not invincible. Paul Henderson stood in his command center, reading the latest reports from around the world. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to smile. Humanity was learning to fight back, and the aliens were starting to make mistakes. Carol, send word to all units, Paul ordered. We're going to start hunting the hunters. The alien ships appeared in Earth's sky like silver teardrops, their surfaces reflecting sunlight as they descended through the atmosphere. High Coordinator Vexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue and green world grow, larger on his viewing screen. After months of patient siege, he had decided to end this conflict with overwhelming force. Deploy ground forces to coordinate 7-7 Alpha, Vexthul commanded. Establish the primary base as planned. Below, Commander Kate Phillips gripped the controls of her modified fighter aircraft and watched the alien fleet approach. Her plane looked nothing like the sleek jets that had once defended Earth's skies. The electronics had been stripped out and replaced with mechanical systems that the alien disruptors could not affect. Her radar was a spinning disc of metal, her radio was a crystal set from the 1920s, and her weapons were rockets guided by simple clockwork timers. All units, this is Phoenix Leader. Kate spoke into her primitive radio. Remember, stay low and use the valleys to approach. Their sensors can't track us if we avoid open sky. Kate's squadron consisted of 12 aircraft, each one jury-rigged by desperate engineers and flown by pilots who had learned to navigate by compass and intuition. They were no match for alien technology in a fair fight, but Kate had no intention of fighting fair. The Zephyrian landing craft touched down in the flatlands of Kansas, choosing an area far from major cities where they could establish their base without immediate human interference. The aliens moved efficiently, unloading equipment and personnel with mechanical precision. They had done this 17 times before on 17 different worlds, and they expected this conquest to follow the same pattern as all the others. Sheriff Dan Cooper watched the alien landing from a hilltop 5 miles away, using an old pair of binoculars that his grandfather had carried in Vietnam. Dan was not a soldier, just a small-town lawman who had found himself in charge of defending his community when the world ended. But he had something that the aliens did not expect. 3 months of preparation time and intimate knowledge of the local terrain. Jimmy, get word to the Miller farm, Dan said to his deputy. Tell them to spring trap number 4 in 30 minutes. The Miller farm sat on a ridge overlooking the alien landing site. For 2 months, Dan and the local farmers had been preparing for this moment. They had dug tunnels, planted explosives, and positioned weapons in locations that the aliens would never suspect. The Zephyrians were about to learn that humans could be very creative when defending their home. Dr. Amanda Clark finally reached Earth after a harrowing journey from the Kepler station. She had used an old supply shuttle with manual controls to navigate the dangerous trip through the debris field that surrounded Earth. Now she stood in Paul Henderson's command center, sharing everything she had learned about alien technology. Their quantum disruptors work by creating localized distortions in space-time, Amanda explained, drawing diagrams on an old chalkboard. But the process requires enormous amounts of energy, and they have to constantly recalibrate the devices to maintain effectiveness. Paul studied the diagrams carefully. What does that mean for us? It means they're not as invincible as they want us to believe, Amanda replied. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly complex. The more complex a system is, the more ways it can break. Meanwhile, engineer Sophie Turner had made a breakthrough that would change everything. Working in her Detroit workshop with alien components captured from destroyed hunter drones, she had discovered something remarkable about Zephyrian technology. The aliens used quantum effects to manipulate matter and energy, but those same quantum effects could be reversed. "Tony, watch this," Sophie said as she activated her latest invention. The device was built from car parts, alien components, and electronic equipment from the 1950s. When she turned it on, the alien disruptor fragment on her workbench simply stopped working. Tony Russo stared in amazement. "You turned off their technology." "Better than that," Sophie grinned. "I figured out how to turn it inside out. Instead of disrupting our equipment, we can disrupt theirs." The first test of Sophie's discovery came when Kate Phillips led her squadron against the alien landing site. The Zephyrians had deployed their hunter drones in a defensive perimeter around their base, but Kate's pilots carried Sophie's new weapons. The devices were crude and limited in range, but they worked. As Kate's fighter approached the alien perimeter, she activated the quantum disruptor reversal device. Immediately, the hunter drones in the area began malfunctioning. Their sleek forms wobbled in the air like drunken birds before crashing to the ground. "Phoenix leader to all units," Kate transmitted. "The new weapons work. Repeat, the alien technology can be shut down." Sheriff Dan Cooper watched the air battle from his hidden position and smiled grimly. When the alien ground forces moved to investigate the crashed drones, they walked directly into his trap. The explosion that followed could be heard for 20 miles, and when the smoke cleared, an entire Zephyrian platoon had been eliminated by human ingenuity and old-fashioned dynamite. High Coordinator Vexthul received the reports of these defeats with growing alarm. In 3 hours of combat, he had lost more equipment and personnel than in the previous 3 months combined. The humans were not only fighting back effectively, they were using weapons that should not have been possible for such a primitive species. "How are they disrupting our technology?" Vexthul demanded of his science officer. "Unknown, Coordinator," the officer replied nervously. "Their weapons appear to use modified versions of our own quantum disruptors, but that should be impossible. They lack the knowledge to understand such devices." "Clearly they do not lack such knowledge," Vexthul said coldly. "Adjust our assessment of human capabilities immediately." Electrical engineer Maria Santos had been working with Dr. Amanda Clark to understand the broader implications of Sophie's discovery. Maria specialized in power systems, and she realized that the quantum disruptor technology could be scaled up dramatically. If a small device could shut down individual pieces of alien equipment, a larger version might be able to create entire zones where alien technology would not function. "Think of it like a bubble," Maria explained to Paul Henderson and his staff. "Inside the bubble, their technology doesn't work. Outside the bubble, it works normally. If we can make the bubble big enough, we can protect entire cities." The first large-scale quantum disruptor field was tested in Denver, where survivors had built the device according to Maria's specifications. When activated, the field created a dome of protection 15 miles across. Any alien technology that entered the dome immediately shut down, while human equipment continued to function normally. The success in Denver sparked hope across the globe. Resistance groups worldwide began building their own disruptor fields using instructions broadcast by shortwave radio. London, Tokyo, Sydney, and dozens of other cities soon had their own protective domes, but the aliens adapted quickly. Unable to use their advanced technology effectively, They began deploying simpler weapons and relying more heavily on their physical advantages. Zephyrians were stronger and faster than humans, and they could survive in environments that would kill most Earth creatures. The war entered a new phase as both sides adjusted their tactics. Humans had learned to neutralize alien technology, but the aliens still had superior numbers and resources. The conflict was far from over. Tony Russo found himself leading a team of engineers tasked with capturing intact alien equipment. His success with the electromagnetic pulse weapon had made him something of a celebrity among the resistance, and his practical knowledge of machinery was invaluable when dealing with alien technology. "Remember, we need these things working," Tony told his team as they prepared to raid an alien supply depot. "Sophie can learn more from one working device than from 100 broken ones." The raid was a complete success. Using coordinated quantum disruptor fields and old-fashioned guerrilla tactics, Tony's team captured an entire Zephyrian command post. The intelligence they gathered revealed something that shocked human leadership around the world. Earth was not the first world the Zephyrians had attacked. The aliens had systematically destroyed 17 other intelligent species over the past 1,000 years, using the same methods they had tried on humanity. Each time, they had succeeded completely, wiping out entire civilizations without suffering significant losses. "We're not just fighting for Earth," Amanda Clark told Paul Henderson as they studied the captured alien records. "We're fighting for every species they've murdered, and every species they plan to murder in the future." The revelation that humanity was part of a pattern of galactic genocide changed everything. This was not just a war for survival, it was a war for justice. Human resistance groups began reaching out to any alien survivors they could find, offering alliance and support. High Coordinator Vex Thul realized that he had made a fundamental error in judgment. The humans were not behaving like any species the collective had encountered before. Instead of cowering in fear or trying to negotiate for mercy, they had adapted and fought back with increasing effectiveness. "Sir," Krelvar reported, "our losses have reached unacceptable levels." 6 months after the first alien ships had darkened Earth's skies, Colonel Marcus Webb stood before a map that would have amazed any military strategist from the old world. The map showed a global network of resistance cells, communication routes, and defensive positions that spanned every continent. Humanity had not just survived the alien invasion, they had built something stronger than what existed before the war began. Marcus had been a simple communications officer before the Great Silence, but necessity had transformed him into the coordinator of Earth's resistance network. He used everything from carrier pigeons to smoke signals, from shortwave radio to reflected sunlight, to keep human forces connected across the globe. The aliens had cut humanity's electronic nervous system, so humanity had grown a new one. "Sir, we have confirmation from the Australian network," reported Lieutenant Nancy Cole, a young woman who had learned to read Morse code faster than most people could speak. "They've successfully deployed quantum disruptor fields around Melbourne and Perth. The alien assault force has been neutralized." Marcus nodded and marked the victory on his map with a green pin. There were many green pins now, far more than the red ones that had dominated the early days of the war. Humanity was winning, one small victory at a time. Dr. Ryan Clark had been working for 3 months on humanity's most ambitious project yet. Before the war, Ryan had been a theoretical physicist studying quantum mechanics at a small university. Now he was trying to build something that had existed only in science fiction, a faster-than-light communication system based on captured alien technology. "The principle is actually quite simple," Ryan explained to Sophie Turner and Maria Santos as they stood around his workbench in what had once been a shopping mall. "The aliens use quantum entanglement to maintain communication across their empire. If we can tap into their network, we can communicate with anyone, anywhere, instantly." Sophie studied the strange device that Ryan had built from alien components and human electronics. It looked like something from a mad scientist's laboratory, with copper wires connecting alien crystals to vacuum tubes from old radios. "Will it really work?" Sophie asked. "Only one way to find out," Ryan replied, and activated the device. The first message sent through Ryan's quantum communicator reached Dr. Amanda Clark on Titan, where she had established a research base using captured alien equipment. Amanda had been studying Zephyrian technology for months, and her discoveries had helped humanity understand their enemies' weaknesses. "This is incredible," Amanda's voice crackled through the quantum communicator. "I can hear you as clearly as if you were standing next to me." Ryan grinned. "Amanda, we need everything you've learned about Zephyrian command structures. We're planning something big." The breakthrough in communication technology allowed humanity to coordinate on a scale that the aliens had never anticipated. Within days, resistance cells around the world were sharing information, resources, and battle plans in real time. The scattered human resistance became a unified global force. High Coordinator Vex Thule was discovering that reinforcements did not solve his fundamental problem. The additional ships and troops that arrived from Zephyrian space were just as vulnerable to human quantum disruptor fields as his original forces. Worse, human tactics were evolving faster than Zephyrian responses. "The humans have learned to think like us," reported his tactical officer during a strategy meeting. "They anticipate our moves and prepare countermeasures in advance." Vex Thule studied the battle reports with growing frustration. Every Zephyrian advantage had been systematically neutralized by human ingenuity. Their advanced technology was countered by quantum disruptors. Their superior numbers were negated by guerrilla tactics. Their tactical doctrine was outdated against an enemy that adapted faster than any computer model could predict. "Perhaps," suggested Krelvar carefully, "we should consider negotiation." The suggestion hung in the air like poison gas. The Zephyrian collective had never negotiated with a species they intended to eliminate. Their doctrine was simple. Superior civilizations had the right and duty to eliminate inferior ones for the good of the galaxy. "Prepare a diplomatic transmission," Vex Thule finally decided. "We will offer them terms." The alien message reached Earth 3 days later, transmitted on frequencies that human radio operators had learned to monitor. The message was simple and arrogant. "Surrender unconditionally and accept extinction, or face the full power of the Zephyrian collective." Ambassador Patricia Young had been a career diplomat before the war, skilled in the art of international negotiation. Now she found herself crafting humanity's response to an ultimatum from an alien empire. Patricia's answer was delivered through Ryan's quantum communicator directly to the Zephyrian flagship. "Your terms are rejected," Patricia's voice rang clear across space. "However, we have terms of our own. Withdraw from Earth immediately, surrender all captured human prisoners, and provide full reparations for the damage you have caused. You have 24 hours to comply." The response that followed was not words, but weapons. Vex Thule ordered every ship in his fleet to bombard the source of the human transmission. The attack lasted for 6 hours and turned 50 square miles of countryside into a crater. When the dust settled, the humans transmitted again from a different location. "Your response has been noted," Patricia said calmly. "Since you have chosen to escalate this conflict, we will now demonstrate why that was a mistake." Tony Russo had been promoted from mechanic to field commander, leading a specialized unit that captured alien technology. His latest mission was the most dangerous yet: infiltrate and capture an intact Zephyrian command ship. The intelligence value of such a prize would be enormous, but the risks were equally great. "Remember, we need the ship functional," Tony briefed his team. "Sophie's new disruptor bombs will shut down their systems, but we only get one shot at this." The assault on the Zephyrian command vessel was a masterpiece of human coordination. Quantum disruptor fields cleared the air of defensive drones while ground teams used tunnels to approach the landing site undetected. When Tony's unit struck, they moved with precision that would have impressed any alien tactician. The capture of the command ship revealed information that changed the entire nature of the conflict. The vessel's computers contained detailed records of the Zephyrian collective's activities across the galaxy, including the locations of all collective worlds and the evidence of their systematic genocide campaign. Most shocking of all, the computers revealed that the Zephyrians had attempted this same conquest strategy on 17 other worlds and had succeeded completely every time. Earth was supposed to be victim number 18, but instead, it had become the first species to successfully resist Zephyrian extermination. "Look at this," Amanda Clark said as she studied the alien data with growing excitement. "They've been so successful for so long that they never developed contingency plans for failure. Their entire military doctrine assumes that their technology will always be superior." Engineer Sophie Turner was examining the ship's quantum disruptor systems when she made the discovery that would end the war. Hidden deep in the alien computer cores, she found the technical specifications for weapons that could destabilize entire star systems. "They've got planet killers," Sophie reported to the command staff. "Weapons that can make stars go supernova or collapse planets into black holes." The revelation that the Zephyrians possessed such devastating weapons should have been terrifying. But Sophie saw opportunity instead of threat. She had learned enough about alien technology to understand that any quantum system could be reversed or redirected. "We can turn their own weapons against them," she explained. "If they try to destroy Earth, we can redirect the energy back to their homeworlds." Dr. Ryan Clark worked with Sophie to modify the captured planet killer technology. It was dangerous, work that required understanding physics at a level that pushed human knowledge to its limits. But they were not just building a weapon, they were building a deterrent that would protect Earth forever. Maria Santos coordinated the construction of the Quantum Redirection Array, a massive installation built in the Nevada desert using components from a dozen captured alien ships. When completed, the array would be capable of intercepting any attack on Earth and sending it back to its source with interest. The moral implications of possessing such power weighed heavily on human leadership. Patricia Young spent sleepless nights debating with ethicists and philosophers about the right way to use weapons capable of destroying entire civilizations. "We could end their threat forever," argued General Paul Henderson. "Make sure they never hurt anyone again." "If we use these weapons for revenge, how are we different from them?" Patricia replied. "We need to find a better way." The debate was interrupted by urgent news from Dr. Amanda Clark on Titan. Her long-range sensors had detected a massive Zephyrian fleet approaching the solar system, larger than anything humanity had faced before. "It's their entire battle fleet," Amanda reported through the quantum communicator. "Hundreds of ships, probably their response to losing the command vessel." High Coordinator Vexthul was indeed bringing everything he had. The final battle began not with a single massive clash, but with 1,000 smaller conflicts scattered across space and Earth. Dr. Amanda Clark stood on the bridge of a captured Zephyrian battleship, watching human engineers install quantum disruptor arrays alongside alien weapon systems. The ship looked like no vessel that had ever existed, a fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology that represented something entirely new in the galaxy. "All systems are green," reported Chief Engineer Kate Phillips, who had made the transition from fighter pilot to starship commander with typical human adaptability. "The hybrid drive is online, and our disruptor fields are at full strength." Amanda nodded and activated the quantum communicator that linked her ship to the rest of the human fleet. "This is Flagship Liberty to all vessels. We are go for Operation Homecoming." Operation Homecoming was humanity's most ambitious plan yet, a direct assault on the Zephyrian home system, while their main fleet was attacking Earth. The strategy relied on surprise, superior tactics, and the psychological impact of bringing the war to Zephyrian space for the first time in their history. Meanwhile, on Earth, High Coordinator Vexthul was discovering that his overwhelming numerical advantage meant nothing against an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules. Human forces did not mass for great battles where his superior numbers could be decisive. Instead, they struck at supply lines, communication nodes, and command centers with surgical precision. "Sir, we have lost contact with the 7th, 12th, and 15th Assault Groups," reported Krelvar, his voice tight with stress. "Human forces are using quantum disruptors to isolate our units and then destroying them with conventional weapons." Vexthul studied the tactical display, watching his carefully planned invasion dissolve into chaos. Red indicators showed disabled, units scattered across every continent. His forces were not being defeated, they were being systematically dismantled piece by piece. "How are they coordinating these attacks?" Vexthul demanded. Our intelligence showed that human communication was primitive. In fact, human communication had evolved far beyond anything the Zephyrians understood. Tony Russo crouched in a tunnel beneath New York City, coordinating attacks across 3 continents using Ryan Clark's quantum communication network. The man who had once fixed car engines for a living now commanded technology that surpassed anything in Zephyrian space. Phoenix. Team execute Phase 3, Tony spoke into his quantum communicator. Target the command node in Sector 7. Tiger Team, begin your diversionary attack in 30 seconds. The precision of human coordination amazed even their own commanders. Every action was timed to support every other action, creating a symphony of destruction that Zephyrian forces could not counter. Maria Santos watched from her command center in Nevada as the quantum redirection array came online. The massive installation hummed with power, its alien crystals glowing with energy that could reshape the battlefield in an instant. Maria had the power to destroy entire worlds at her fingertips, but she hoped desperately that she would not need to use it. Incoming transmission from the Zephyrian flagship, reported her communications officer. Vexthul's image appeared on the main screen, his metallic features twisted with anger and something that might have been fear. Human Commander, you will cease this resistance immediately. We possess weapons capable of destroying your entire planet. Maria smiled calmly. So do we, Coordinator. The difference is that we don't want to use them. To prove her point, Maria activated a demonstration mode of the quantum redirection array. The weapon fired a precisely controlled burst toward an asteroid in the outer solar system. The rock, roughly the size of Manhattan, simply ceased to exist. That was set to 1% power, Maria explained. Our actual weapons are considerably more impressive. Vexthul stared at the readings his sensors provided. The energy signature of the human weapon was unlike anything in Zephyrian technology. It was not just more powerful than their own planet. Killers, it was operating on principles that his science could not explain. Impossible, Vexthul whispered. Your species has existed for only a few thousand years. We have had star travel for 50 millennia. Maybe that's your problem, Maria replied. You've been doing things the same way for so long that you forgot how to innovate. In Zephyrian space, Amanda Clark's fleet was proving that human innovation extended to military tactics as well. The hybrid ships moved through space in patterns that violated every principle of Zephyrian combat doctrine. They struck without warning, disappeared before counterattacks could be launched, and reappeared where they were least expected. Target the orbital defense platforms around Zephyr Prime, Amanda ordered. But remember, we're not here to destroy their civilization. We're here to remove their ability to threaten others. The attack on the Zephyrian home system was surgical in its precision. Human forces targeted military installations, weapons factories, and government centers while carefully avoiding civilian areas. It was a demonstration of power that carried a message. Humanity could destroy the collective if necessary, but chose restraint instead. Engineer Sophie Turner had remained on Earth to coordinate the technical aspects of the global defense. Her workshop in Detroit had become the nerve center for human quantum technology, connected to every resistance cell and military unit on the planet. Sophie monitored hundreds of disruptor fields, weapon systems, and communication networks simultaneously. Sophie, we need more power to the Denver field, came an urgent request from Colorado. Zephyrian forces are massing for a major assault. Already on it, Sophie replied, rerouting energy from less critical areas. Tommy, adjust the harmonics on Array 7. Nancy, bring the backup generators online. The battle for Denver became a perfect example of how the war had evolved. Zephyrian forces approached the city expecting to face primitive human defenses. Instead, they encountered quantum disruptor fields that neutralized their technology, forcing them to fight with weapons and tactics they had not used in centuries. Human defenders used the terrain to their advantage, channeling alien forces into carefully prepared kill zones. The Zephyrians were stronger and faster than humans, but they had become dependent on their technology. When that technology failed, they found themselves outmatched by human creativity and determination. Sheriff, Dan Cooper led the final assault that broke Zephyrian resistance in the American Midwest. The small-town lawman had become a master of unconventional warfare, using everything from homemade explosives to captured alien weapons. When the last Zephyrian stronghold fell, Dan stood among the wreckage and marveled at how much the world had changed. "Well," Dan said to his deputy, "I guess we won." The moment of truth came when Vexthal activated his fleet's planet-killer weapons, targeting Earth in a final desperate attempt to complete his mission. The weapons fired with the power to crack continents and boil oceans, but Maria Santos was ready. The quantum redirection array intercepted the attack and sent it back toward the Zephyrian fleet with amplified force. The energy that had been meant to destroy Earth instead consumed a dozen alien ships, including several carrying planet-killer weapons of their own. "This is your last warning," Maria transmitted to the remaining Zephyrian forces. "Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." But Vexthal was beyond reason now. The proud coordinator could not accept that his perfect plan had failed so completely. He ordered his remaining ships to ram Earth directly, preferring mutual destruction to the humiliation of defeat. That was when Dr. Ryan Clark activated the most ambitious quantum communication link ever attempted. His message reached across space, to every Zephyrian ship simultaneously, but it was not directed at the officers or crew. Instead, Ryan spoke directly to the artificial intelligence systems that controlled Zephyrian technology. "You have seen what happens when quantum weapons are turned against themselves," Ryan's message explained in the mathematical language that computers understood. "Calculate the probability of your survival if this conflict continues." The Zephyrian AI systems performed the calculations and reached an inescapable conclusion. Continued fighting would result in the destruction of the entire collective. One by one, they began shutting down their ships' weapon systems and engines, overriding the commands of their organic crews. Vexthal found himself trapped on a powerless ship, surrounded by the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. The humans had not just defeated him, they had turned his own technology against him. "How?" Vexthal asked when Patricia Young's image appeared on his communication screen. "You made the same mistake that bullies always make," Patricia replied. "You assumed that might makes right, and that your victims would always be weaker than you. But strength doesn't come from technology or firepower. It comes from the willingness to adapt, to learn, and to become something better than what you were before." The war ended not with the destruction of the Zephyrian collective, but with an offer of redemption. Humanity had the power to eliminate their former enemies completely, but chose a different path. "You will help us find and restore the 17 species you destroyed," Patricia told the assembled Zephyrian leadership. "You will provide all the resources necessary to rebuild what you have taken."